Blood matted Luna's dark fur as she gave birth to her fourth cub, her massive body trembling with exhaustion. Dr. Thomas Mitchell pressed closer to the observation window, his experienced eyes fixed on the struggling black bear. In 20 years of wildlife medicine, he had never seen a bear give birth to so many cubs. The cubs had been successfully born, but Luna wasn't finished. Her body tensed again, and the fifth cub appeared in the faint morning light of the Montana Wildlife Recovery Center. 5 cubs. This number alone was enough to cause excitement in the veterinary community. Dr. Mitchell watched as Luna tenderly cleaned each of her cubs, gently bringing them to life with her huge tongue. The cubs were surprisingly robust for a multiple birth. Each one squirmed with healthy strength, searching for their mother's warmth. This should have been the end of the story, a remarkable ending worthy of scientific journals and animal documentaries. 5 healthy cubs from a single mother was an achievement that would make headlines across the country. Luna had arrived at the sanctuary 4 months earlier, her powerful body concealing a precious cargo. The first ultrasound had revealed multiple cubs, astonishing the sanctuary staff even then. Even then, something about the grainy images had troubled Dr. Mitchell. He had performed countless ultrasounds on pregnant bears, but Luna's scans seemed somehow different. He had pushed aside his unease and focused instead on the extraordinary number of cubs she carried. As autumn painted the Montana wilderness in brilliant golds and deep reds, Luna's behavior became increasingly unusual. Her 800-pound body moved with less energy as she prepared her birthing den. The sanctuary staff monitored her with growing anticipation. Their sophisticated equipment recorded every change in her condition. Dr. Mitchell spent extra hours reviewing the data, but couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to witness something unprecedented. The morning of the birth arrived with an electricity in the air that tightened every nerve. Luna's desperate growls echoed through the observation room as Dr. Mitchell gathered his team. The first cub arrived as the rising sun painted the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. Within a few hours, 4 more cubs followed, each defying the usual risks and complications of multiple births. The observation room filled with quiet joy as the 5th cub took its first breath. Dr. Mitchell began to make his preliminary notes, documenting the event that he believed was one of the most successful multiple births in the sanctuary's history. His pen glided expertly across the page as he noted weights, times, and vital signs. Everything about the birth had gone perfectly, almost too perfectly. Later, Dr. Mitchell would realize that this perfection had only set the stage for what came next. Luna's gentle licking of her cubs suddenly stopped. Her massive body tensed again, and her breathing shifted back into the unmistakable pattern of active labor. Dr. Mitchell's pen froze mid-sentence. 20 years of experience told him that this was impossible. They had witnessed the birth of 5 cubs. They had documented 5 cubs. Every textbook, every research paper, every piece of scientific knowledge stated that this birth was complete. But Luna's body told a different story. Dr. Mitchell dropped his notes and moved closer to the observation window. The 5 cubs lay huddled together in Luna's warm fur, vying for the best nursing spots. But the sophisticated monitoring equipment confirmed what his eyes were telling him. The contraction patterns displayed on the screens corresponded to active labor, not the gentle post-birth process he had witnessed hundreds of times before. "This is impossible," he whispered, his coffee cup forgotten on the edge of the observation ledge. The other team members fell silent, their eyes fixed on Luna's massive form. The morning light illuminated every detail of the unfolding scene. 5 cubs. They had counted 5 cubs. They had documented 5 cubs. Yet Luna's powerful muscles tensed again in unmistakable contractions. Sarah Collins, the sanctuary's experienced wildlife nurse, checked the monitors again. "Those are contractions," she confirmed, her voice strained. "Just like before the other cubs." "But that's not possible, Doctor," Mitchell replied. "Black bears don't have 6 cubs. It just doesn't happen." Dr. Mitchell's hands trembled slightly as he readjusted the cameras. Everything that was happening had to be thoroughly documented. Without proper evidence, no one would believe what they were about to see. He mentally reviewed everything he knew about bear reproduction. In rare cases, bears could deliver their cubs with short delays between births, but this was different. The 5 cubs had all been born hours ago. This was something entirely different. Luna's desperate growls grew louder, echoing through the observation room. Her massive body shifted, driven by maternal instinct. She was compelled to protect her 5 cubs as she prepared to give birth to something else. The monitoring equipment beeped incessantly, recording vital signs that should have been impossible at this stage of birth. The tension in the room intensified as Luna's contractions grew stronger. Dr. Mitchell pressed his face against the glass. His scientific mind struggled to process what he was seeing. All his years in veterinary medicine hadn't prepared him for this moment. The other team members crowded behind him, their clipboards and tablets forgotten as they watched history unfold. Luna's powerful body tensed one last time. What happened next caused Dr. Mitchell's coffee cup to slip from his suddenly numb fingers. The ceramic shattered on the floor. The noise broke the hushed silence of the observation room, but no one turned to look. All eyes remained fixed on what had just appeared in Luna's enclosure. The experienced veterinarian's mouth opened and closed silently. His legs felt weak, and he had to grip the windowsill for support. Behind him, he heard Sarah gasp, followed by the clatter of her tablet falling to the floor. What lay before them defied everything known about bear reproduction and everything known about nature itself. Luna turned her head towards her newborn. Her gentle tongue reached out to clean something that shouldn't exist, that couldn't exist. Dr. Mitchell felt the urge to rub his eyes, to somehow dispel what surely must be a hallucination, but the image remained, growing clearer with each passing second as Luna cleaned her newest cub. Time seemed to stand still in the observation room as Luna revealed what had emerged through the glass after her 5 cubs. Dr. Mitchell stared at something that would challenge the foundations of wildlife medicine. A 6th cub lay before them, but its appearance caused everyone in the room to instinctively step back. This was no ordinary bear cub. First, there was its size. While the 5 previous cubs had normal newborn proportions, this cub was almost twice their size. Its wet fur glistened under the observation lights, revealing a coloration that sent shockwaves through the medical team. Instead of the expected black fur of an American black bear, this cub's fur displayed distinct silver-white patches, forming a pattern never before documented in recorded history. As Luna cleaned her extraordinary offspring, even more impossible features came into view. The cub's facial structure differed dramatically from its siblings. Its snout was shorter, finer, and most shockingly, its eyes were partially open. Newborn bear cubs typically keep their eyes closed for weeks after birth. Yet this cub seemed to defy every known rule of development. "Get a genetics specialist on the phone immediately," Dr. Mitchell commanded, his voice barely more than a whisper, "and secure every piece of footage we have. No one would believe this without proof." His hands trembled as he reached for his phone and almost dropped it. The cub let out a cry unlike any doctor Mitchell had ever heard from a newborn bear. The loud cry echoed through the observation room, a haunting call that combined the typical squeaks of a bear cub with something utterly alien. The 6th cub's movements provided another shock. While its siblings displayed the typical uncoordinated wriggling of newborns, this cub moved with remarkable muscle control within minutes of birth. It had already begun making deliberate movements toward its mother. Its oversized paws showed distinct markings, reminiscent of ancient cave paintings of mythical creatures. Luna's reaction to her unusual offspring added another layer of mystery. Despite the obvious differences, she showed no signs of rejection. Instead, she gave the 6th cub particular attention, carefully positioning it among its siblings. The 5 normal cubs, all with the expected black fur and typical newborn features, gathered around their extraordinary sibling as if they perceived nothing unusual. Dr. Mitchell grabbed his medical journal. His pen flew across the pages as he documented every impossible detail. The cub's estimated weight, which far exceeded normal parameters, the distinctive markings that seemed to shimmer in the morning light, and the advanced development that contradicted everything known about bear cub growth patterns. Each observation felt more unbelievable than the last. Sarah Collins, who had assisted with bear births for over 15 years, finally found her voice. "Doctor," she whispered, "look at its paw." Dr. Mitchell followed her pointing finger and gasped. The cub's paw pads displayed a complex pattern of markings that seemed to form distinct symbols, something that had never been documented in any known species. The meaning of what they were experiencing gradually became clear. This was not just an unusual birth or a rare genetic mutation, but something that would compel the scientific community to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about animal biology. The sixth cub was a biological impossibility existing right before their eyes. Within hours, news of the extraordinary birth spread like wildfire through the sanctuary. The observation room filled with wildlife experts from neighboring facilities drawn by reports of something unique. Dr. Mitchell had to repeatedly explain the sequence of events, but each retelling felt just as unbelievable as the first. The five normal cubs. We thought it was over, he explained to Dr. Rachel Wang, a leading expert in bear genetics who had flown in from Seattle. Then Luna gave birth to something that defies explanation. He pointed to the observation window, where the sixth cub continued to display behaviors impossible for a newborn. While its five siblings slept and nursed like typical newborns, the sixth cub showed an alertness that usually preceded weeks of development. Its amber eyes, which should have still been closed, followed every movement in the room. The silver-white markings on its fur shimmered under the sanctuary lights, creating hypnotic patterns. Laboratory results from the initial health check deepened the mystery further. The cub's blood tests revealed characteristics never before observed in any known species. Its body temperature was several degrees higher than its siblings, without any signs of fever or discomfort. Most puzzling, however, was its heartbeat. Its rhythm was simply impossible for a newborn of that size. Luna's behavior continued to fascinate the medical team. She seemed to recognize that her sixth cub required special attention, often positioning it so that it was shielded from direct observation. When the cub made its unusual vocalizations, a mixture of typical bear calls and something unknown, Luna responded with a deep, rumbling growl that she didn't use with any of her other cubs. "It will take years to understand the genetic implications," commented Dr. Wang as she observed the unusual family. "If what you've told me is true, this cub represents something entirely new in evolution." She paused, watching as the cub made another unnaturally coordinated movement. The real question is, where did these traits come from? By evening, strict security measures were put in place at the sanctuary. News agencies were already gathering at the gates, drawn by rumors of a remarkable event. Dr. Mitchell received countless calls from wildlife centers across the country, all struggling to believe his report until they saw the video evidence. The footage of the birth and the cub's unique features was secured in multiple locations. As night fell over the Montana Wildlife Recovery Center, the extraordinary family settled down to rest. The five normal cubs slept peacefully at Luna's side, but their remarkable sibling remained alert. The silver-white markings on its fur seemed to glow softly in the dim light of the nighttime monitoring equipment. The mysterious symbols on its paws pulsed with an inexplicable luminescence. Dr. Mitchell sat in his office, surrounded by preliminary reports and records of the day's events. The thought that what they had witnessed would forever change the world of wildlife biology wouldn't leave him. Dozens of emails appeared on his computer screen from wildlife research institutes around the world. Each one requested more information about the unprecedented birth. Geneticists from 3 continents had already booked flights to Montana, eager to witness firsthand what many were calling the most significant discovery in wildlife science of the century. The video footage was carefully secured on secure servers, irrefutable proof of something that many otherwise wouldn't have believed. "In all my years in wildlife medicine," Dr. Mitchell wrote in his official report, "nothing could have prepared me for what happened after those 5 cubs. What we witness today challenges our entire understanding of genetics and natural development." His fingers hesitated over the keyboard as he searched for words to describe the impossible creature that had emerged last from Luna's extraordinary litter. Even the most precise scientific language seemed inadequate to describe the magnitude of what they had observed. Meanwhile, the sanctuary's security teams reported growing crowds at the facility's gates. News of something unusual had leaked, capturing the attention of media across the state. Local television crews had set up their equipment and were broadcasting live updates about rumors of an unprecedented wildlife event. Dr. Mitchell knew that they couldn't and shouldn't keep this discovery secret for long. What they had experienced would forever change wildlife medicine and open new chapters in scientific research and understanding. Luna seemed oblivious to the excitement. Her remarkable birth hadn't stopped her from continuing to care devotedly for all 6 of her cubs. Yet her interactions with the unusual last-born cub showed subtle differences. The way she positioned herself to shield it from view and the unique vocalizations they shared suggested that she instinctively recognized its special nature. The medical team had recorded over 20 different vocalizations between the mother and the unusual cub, a range of communication far beyond typical bear interactions. As midnight approached, Dr. Mitchell made one last visit to the observation room. The unusual cub was awake, its amber eyes reflecting the faint red glow of the night vision cameras. Those eyes followed every movement with an intelligence unthinkable in a newborn bear. The mysterious markings on its paws seemed to pulse in the darkness, their patterns appearing to shift slightly with each movement, a phenomenon that defied any understanding of fur patterns. "What are you?" he whispered through the glass. "Where did you come from?" At the sound of his voice, the cub turned its head, as if it had heard him. Another astonishing demonstration of coordination and awareness. While its 5 siblings slept peacefully, the extraordinary cub remained awake, seemingly consciously aware of its surroundings. The cub let out a soft chirp, a sound unlike anything ever documented as bear communication. Dr. Mitchell felt the weight of the moment as he contemplated the challenges to come. The next morning would bring countless questions. Geneticists would analyze the cub, evolutionary biologists would debate its significance, and conservationists would discuss its implications for wildlife protection. But in this quiet night, Dr. Mitchell reflected on the day and observed the cub whose very existence challenged everything known about nature. This birth was more than a scientific curiosity. It was a reminder that nature still holds secrets waiting to be discovered. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Thanks to our valued viewers, we continue to improve every day. Please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up.